virtual First Friday at the Custom House Maritime Museum, where we explore our history through presentation and social interaction. Tonight, we welcome Ghlee Woodworth to the Custom House. Ghlee is a researcher, preservationist, award-winning author, and tour guide who for many years has been conducting tours of the Old Hill Burying Ground and Highland cemeteries, as well as African American history and the abolitionist movement in Newburyport. Tonight, Ghlee will be presenting on the Newburyport Clipper Heritage Trail, a series of self-guided history tours for which she has already published the first volume of a book series in which it is detailed how historic downtown Newburyport was preserved during its period of urban renewal. She is currently working on the publication of Volume 2 of that series. We're very grateful to have her here tonight. Please welcome Ghlee Woodworth.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on First Friday at the Custom House Maritime Museum, and it's September 4th. So I'm Ghlee Woodworth, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my new publication, Newburyport Clipper Heritage Trail, Volume 1. And so what do we see here? In the photograph, that's the large rock and the river. Think about it. Right, that is Parker River, and this is the monument honoring the first settlers and where they landed in Newbury in 1635. Right. Okay, so Newburyport Clipper Heritage Trail. This is a beautiful view. Where are we standing? Think. Yes, we're in the Unitarian Church and the steeple, and we're overlooking, in the foreground is Inn Street before urban renewal, and then you can see the Custom House down there in left center along the water, and then off along the river to the right center is eventually the mouth of the river. Wonderful aerial photograph. Okay, so Newburyport Clipper Heritage Trail I created several years ago, and it's a series of self-guided history tours, and you can download brochures and maps, and it's also a free, there's free smartphone tours, and it focuses a lot on the downtown, but also other places in the city. And it was an American Association for State and Local History Merit Award winner, so that's a wonderful award for Newburyport. Okay, this is the homepage of the website, Clipper Heritage Trail, and you can see on the menu bar where you can download brochures, and you can look at the different tours, and there's also a video, and then that on the left bottom of that top bar is the mobile website, and that's where you can pick up the smartphone tours. Okay, and this is the cover of the Newburyport Clipper Heritage Trail book, Volume 1. On the right is the front cover, and that is a photo in 1898 in Market Square. And you can see the firehouse on the right, and there was this large celebration, and it was about the Spanish-American War ending. And on the left, if you turn in Market Square, now you are looking up State Street, and this is in 1885. And on the left, just past the horse and carriage, the wagon, is Liberty Street. Okay, so again, it's self-guided tours. There are 9 chapter/tours. There's maps, legends, about 75 locations that I wrote about, and 370 plus images. Volume 2, I'm currently working on, which will be out, I hope, next summer. And I have tours from Maudsley State Park all the way to Plum Island. Okay, so here's some of the highlights. Here are the tours, and I'll show you some highlights for each of the tours. The beginning, write about architecture, urban renewal story, ashes to restoration, about the shipbuilders and merchants, biscuits, boxes, and coal. That's a tour on Water Street. Then I go through State Street and Pleasant Street, Green Street, Brown Square, and then down along and the ridge. So here's some sneak peeks and highlights. So the beginning, of course, 1635, and the settlers came in, and there is again the monument down on Cottage Road, Riverfront Road down in Newbury, and this was installed in about 1902 in honor of those first settlers. Architecture. I wanted to go over just the basics of what we have in Newburyport, and remind people or educate people of what we have on some of the main types of architecture. And the Newburyport Preservation Trust, with the help of Greg Collins, created these wonderful diagrams. And this tells the basics of the 5 basic types of architecture that we have in Newburyport. And in each type of architecture, there's also a photo that accompanies to help you understand the basics. This is a great find from 1805. Sharon Spieldenner, the archivist in the Newburyport Library Archives, found this book, and this is the rules of work. And everybody, all the house rights, were charging all kinds of different fees, and they were all taking different time of how they were building windows or door frames or even latrines. And so this was kind of a guide, rules of work for those workmen. So it comes some consistency in their fees. So this is some of the basic architecture we have. I love doors and windows. I included those, and so people can get a little familiar with the basics. Okay, ashes to restoration. This is my favorite story. I did research many years ago because I wanted to understand what really happened. And so I start off with the Great Fire of 1811, and then I go into the story of urban renewal. And who were these people from the very first day? How did this all begin? And who were the people to help save the downtown? You can see the map on the left is the Great Fire of 1811. Over 200 buildings and homes were destroyed, but fortunately, no one was seriously injured or died in that fire, so we're very fortunate. And then this is the look, of course, today of our beautiful Market Square and our buildings. Mary Wilkins Hasslinger and her dad, Dr. Robert Wilkins. And this is just a wonderful story. And I tell the story with quotes from Mary and from others, including Mayor George Lawler. And I'm not going to tell you, but Mary was 18 years old, and she was the catalyst for saving our historic downtown. And many people don't know that. Most people do not know that. Also, an unsung hero, Mayor George Lawler. He did not get his recognition, I think, as he should have. And I have always tooted his horn. Mayor Lawler had the papers that the city council passed to essentially bulldoze the downtown. And those papers were sitting on his desk. And all he had to do was sign those papers, and the downtown would have been gone. So it's a great story. And here's some couple photographs of Inn Street before urban renewal. And now, of course, today, how very, very fortunate we are. And where are we here? Look at the top of the photo. There's the Salisbury-Newburyport Bridge. And now we're behind the firehouse, and now today. Incredible, isn't it? Okay, tour 3, I wanted to talk about how these ships were, these massive vessels were built. In volume 2, I will be writing about the shipyards, most of the main shipyards on Upper Merrimack Street. But in volume 1, I talk about how these ships were built and what was involved. And the men had some pieces of paper. They had a list of what they needed, and they walked out to the forest and they began cutting the wood that they needed. And this is the framing and eventually the planking. And here's a launch. Isn't it incredible? Hundreds of people will come in on the railroad. And then also schools were let out for students, the young children, to watch the launching. Incredible. Okay, State Street, I talk a lot about downtown, and most of it's in the 1800s. And you can see some of the places that I've written about on the left and the map on the right. And these are the different types of images that I use. You can see, I absolutely love the city directories. In the top left is Mr. Mumford. He was a surgeon dentist in the Prince House. And what was the Prince House, everybody? Also the Tracy Mansion, our current public library. And then coins. My friend, the late Rick Bagg, was able to get these. He was one of the coin specialists, one of the top in the United States. He was able to get these images in the 1600s. And this is the coins that were rattling around in pockets in downtown. On the left is an image of the Wolf Tavern sign. And in the middle lower is Tracy Mansion. And at this time was Sun Hotel. This is an engraving. And then on the right is Nathaniel Tracy. And this is a drawing by Laura Cruz Hills, our wonderful artist. Okay, there's a nice scene looking down State Street. We're at the corner of Charter Street. And on the left, right, just out of the picture, is Pleasant Street. And anybody, where are we here? Might be a little tricky. We are standing again on State Street and at the corner of Temple. And this is the White House that is currently there. That is a professional building with attorneys and so forth. And on the right is, anybody? The Whitefield Church. It was built in the middle of the 1800s and was eventually taken down in the about 1940s. And the Institution for Savings Loan Office is there now. There's great pictures of the cars. Okay, now we're up at a Pleasant Street. I read about Dodge Shoe Factory, the Toll family. We had Bartlett Steam Mills, the Safford Jewelers, who William Safford in the 1890s went off to the Klondike Gold Rush with his brother Edward. And of course, our beautiful Unitarian Church. And there was a firehouse, and then the Hidden House and what's now the post office. And that's a very popular image. I'm standing back to State Street, looking towards the Unitarian Church, built in 1801. And on the left, that tall building is the old Dodge Shoe Factory. And the Dodge family, the shoe factory, was one of the top, some say the top producing shoe factories of ladies and children's shoes. Incredible, in the country. All right, this is another look, looking the opposite way. On the very left is the Phillips building. And then that small white building, anybody guess? That's the firehouse, and that's now the entrance to the Unicorn Street parking. And then, of course, there's the Unitarian, and then that tall brick building in the center was the Bartlett steam mills that burned down in the 1880s. Okay, this is a great photo. We're standing with our back to Green Street, and on the very far right is the driveway to the post office. And there's the Star Theater right next to it. And over on the left, you can see the sign for Premier Theater. It's a great photo. Okay, Green Street. I'll talk a little bit about Strand Theater, the Baptist Church, some houses up there, the folks who occupied them were Judge Theophilus Parsons, the Clark Currier House, and the IC Parish Church. And this is looking down Green Street. There's Merrimack River and Rings Island in the back, and you can see the homes that used to occupy the space on the right and on the left. And where are we? We're looking up Green Street at this beautiful home that belonged to Judge Theophilus Parsons on the corner of Washington and Green. And what is there now? The IC Catholic Church, school. And then you can see the IC Church, and that's the original steeple that also by fire burned down in the 1940s. Okay, Brown Square, houses, the Garrison Inn, of course the North Church, beautiful North Church, William Lloyd Garrison, and Butler's Bakery, City Hall, and the War Memorials. Okay, here we go. And where are we standing? Yeah, we're back in the Unitarian Church steeple. What a great view that is. Looking at the old North Church, the original church had faced the river, and then it was turned around when they built the new church. And then the center right, that is the rooftop of City Hall. And there we have another great view of the beautiful North Church. And of course the Garrison Inn, Moses Brown built that. The plans were that after he built this, to the left, he was building some more brick structures, but then the War of 1812 came along and the embargo and so forth. And so this was the only structure that he completed. Okay, and there's City Hall, all decorated for an anniversary. And look at the people. That's a great photo. Got the people standing there. Okay, biscuits, boxes, and coal. So we're starting at Market Square and we're going down Water Street, past the Custom House, and right about Knight's Grain, the oldest grain company in the area, Elbow Alley, where African Americans had some businesses, because the Custom House, Pearson's Bakery that supplied baked goods to the ships, and Pearson's Bakery, long story short, eventually became the New York Biscuit Company, joining other companies. And then in the 1950s, that name was changed to, I can hear everybody yelling it, Nabisco. Love those Oreo cookies. Okay, and then the Atkinson Coal Company, and the Box Factory, the Harbor Lights, the Tannery, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Okay, here's the firehouse. Great photo. Wonderful photo. Look at the hustle wagon, the covered wagons. Market house in 1820s, and then eventually became the firehouse and also housed the police station. And there's a common view, beautiful view of the Custom House, built in 1835. Now this is a great photo. And we're looking, the Merrimack River is behind us. And this is, excuse me, you've got the railroad for the coal industry. And the City Railroad came in about 1873. And if you look center left, you can see the back of the firehouse. And then you can see the different steeples, Unitarian, the IC, there's the Baptist, and the North Church. Okay, down along and the ridge, I wanted to include, because this is a beautiful part of High Street, and on the south end is known on High Street as Down Along, and then State Street to the north end is known as Up Along, and I'll be writing about Up Along in volume 2. So I talk about a lot of the people who lived in the homes along this section of High Street. And oh, this is a great photograph. Can you figure out where we are? Remember, we're on Down Along. So we're standing, yes, on top of Marches Hill, and we're looking towards High Street. Okay, and then in the foreground, you can see where the City Railroad cut through to High Street from right to left. And that is now currently the rail trail. Wonderful photo. That's a Chris Snow photograph. All right, and here we are. Look at the police officer on the right, standing there. Love that hat. We are at the top of Bromfield Street. There's Bromfield on the right. Captain Rains lived on the corner of High and Bromfield in that white house. And on the left, you can see there is a fence along Marches Hill, and then you can see the trolley tracks in the center. The street was widened in the late 1800s. They thought at one point the city was going to put a railroad depot in this area, but they chose not to. And the railroad depot ended up on Pond Street, where CVS is today. And of course, there's the Cushing home, the Museum of Old Newbury now, and on the right is a young Margaret Cushing who lived in the home her entire life from the 1850s to the 1950s. She was 100 years old. And I use a lot of her writings in my book, quoting her. All right, so thank you. Again, that was a few of the highlights. Isn't this a great photograph? As you can see all the bicycles, men and women, and in the background, that's Old Hill Burying Ground. So they're standing on Bartlett Mound. All right, and so here's some information. You can call me, you can email me if you're interested in a copy of the book, and I am at Brown Chapel at Oak Hill Cemetery, generally Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, 4 to 6, and Sunday mornings. But you can always call me. I deliver books. I'd be happy to. And I've had lots of people very pleased and very happy and excited about the book. And so it's probably going to make a nice holiday gift. So keep that in mind. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Lee, that was a spectacular presentation. This is Joan Whitlow. I'm really excited that you pointed out the Clipper Heritage Trail website. This book seems to really enrich the experience with lots of the graphics and illustrations. But I was curious, is this the kind of book that you would suggest that people take with them when they're walking on the tour, or is it something that they can read at home? And how do you envision it, being used?
Right. There's lots of different ways. There are people who sit at home in their most comfortable chair, and You can just open up the book at any page. You can start in any chapter or tour that you would like, or you can also take the book and take a walk along State Street or Green Street or along down along on High Street. It's whatever the person prefers. There's a lot of people say, "Oh, I just like images, pictures." I said, "This book is for you," and chances are they'll probably sneak in a few quick glances at a few sentences next to the photo. So it's a very user-friendly book, just like my first book, Tiptoe Through the Tombstones, Oak Hill. Again, it's just a user-friendly at home and or on the street.
Mm-hmm. I see that lots of people are still without their video and mute. If they go to the lower part of the screen, they're welcome to unclick it if you'd like to participate, or you can remain just listening quietly to the discussion and the questions. I don't know if anyone else has a thought or an opportunity to ask a question, but now's your time. I see a few people have unmuted themselves. Judy, would you like to say something or ask something, or? I earlier picked up the book. You had bought it for the museum, and it certainly passed my test. I tend to, pick up a book and then flip through backwards, and I found myself thinking, oh, I have a few minutes, and I looked up and it was 20 minutes later. So it certainly is captivating, and I really am looking forward to volume 2. Do you expect volume 2 to be very similar, or just sort of along the same organizational lines, or bring in other topics?
Yes, the design will generally be the same. I have a wonderful graphic designer, Paige, and Paige was with me with the Tiptoe Oak Hill book, and I emailed her a couple years ago and said, hey, would you be interested in helping with another book? And she said yes. So the design overall will be similar. And volume 2, I hope to be out next summer, and it's will be from Maudsley State Park to Plum Island. And again, as my books, I'm focused on people. And via the people, you can learn about different happenings and events. So Maudsley State Park, and I talk about the Little family, Henry Bailey Little and his son Charles, and Charles died just after World War I. William Swayze, who was a benefactor in Newburyport. In fact, the schools are still benefiting today from the Swayze Fund. I also write about, I will be writing about Elizabeth Bray, who the Custom House staff and I believe intern took a look at those diaries from Elizabeth. I'll be writing about her. The Dodge sisters, who lived up on High Street. Tamzine Donna, who actually grew up here. And does Donna, the last name, sound familiar? Of the Donna Party.
Yes.
Yes, the Donna Party, yes. And
never take a shortcut.
Never take a shortcut, right. So lots of people, probably again about 75 locations, about around there for volume 2.
Ghlee, this is Sue. On YouTube, there's a couple of questions. If you don't mind, I'll pose those. One question is, there are many remaining buildings and homes from these times, but where are all the ships, which were made of even stronger construction than the buildings?
Yeah, no, those ships are long gone, unfortunately, right? The sailing ships, many of them just fell into disrepair, or they were lost at sea. And then, of course, there was the privateers, many of them with Nathaniel Tracy, those were lost. So there's really, you had the Flying Cloud, but that was a replica of Donald Mackay's that came in late 60s, I think, to Newburyport Harbor. Yeah, so remember, they're made of wood. And so they're gone.
One of the other questions was they was asking about the app for the trails. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, go to, or on your phone, go to clipperheritagetrail.com. Then you get on to the home page, and you look on top, and on the far left, you'll see the words mobile website. So just click on mobile website, and you'll come up with downtown tour or city tour, and you can choose either one. And it's very, very simple to use. There's no cost.
Anybody else? Welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. It's the only opportunity.
Having Ghlee here is a wonderful opportunity. She's a wealth of knowledge about downtown and the people that lived here.
Mm-hmm. I have one last question, Ghlee. When you were sort of organizing, did you find that, can you talk a little bit about how, was it, you know, sort of a stretch where you had to sort of put it into a category, or were you able to just sort of look at a couple of streets because the proximity is really close?
Mm-hmm.
And, or did you just realize that in looking at this, you saw some common threads and then you elaborated on those?
Right. When I first started designing the Clipper Heritage Trail, which is about 10 years ago now, I wanted to focus on the downtown because of our historic downtown and the story, but also to support the downtown businesses. And if people wanted to take a walk, well, let's try to, any kind of thing or event can help them to go downtown. So that was key, downtown. And then I thought, and then there were buildings or events or people that I knew of. And then I started writing them down on paper, and I thought, okay, there'll be just one tour of downtown. And then as I started adding more and more and more, I thought, wait a minute, this is getting too big. Let me break down the streets. Let me do one on State Street, Pleasant Street, Green Street. Well, Brown Square makes sense. Okay, the firehouse down Water Street past the Custom House. And so they kind of just sort of came together. And I thought, well, I really want to get High Street in. It's close enough to downtown, and get down along. And so that's how I do it. And I might, for example, and I've added stops in the book, the trail book. And for example, on State Street, I've always walked by, oftentimes, Philip Blumpy in Oak Hill Cemetery, a very large, beautiful monument. And I love his name. And so I researched Philip Blumpy to see, okay, who was this man? And I found out his office and his home, his home was on the corner of Temple and State Street. I said, oh, I've got to include Philip Blumpy. So there's nothing, well, most of the time it's nothing profound. It's just something as simple as, oh, I walked by the gravestone, or I read something in the newspaper when I was looking for something else and I saw this name. Because the foundation of my research are people as opposed events. If I find an event or a happening of some sort, then I find a person that's connected with that event or happening or that house or building and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I do think your tour one with the architecture is wonderful. I mean, that's something that even if you don't even like history, you know, just looking at the architecture and understanding the different styles, because Newburyport's such a wealth, and understand the vocabulary a little bit, or what makes the downtown special is really spectacular. So
right, and Newburyport Preservation Trust did a wonderful job, and I talked to them several years ago, and I said, hey, you've done it. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so I used their diagrams that Greg Colling had designed. And I just wanted, because there's been the books written by Newburyport Preservation Trust and Reg Bacon on details, very detailed explanations of the architecture. And I just wanted to give a basic summary for those who are familiar or who just need to be reminded, or someone who's coming in from outside of Newburyport, heard about architecture, and now they're able to walk through the downtown and the streets and High Street and kind of get a basic understanding of what they're looking at.
Mhm.
Ghlee, many of us don't really know Oak Hill Cemetery that well. So, and that's your passion. Could you share with us some of the stories from the cemetery as well?
Oak Hill Cemetery was established in 1842. It was a group of citizens who wanted to establish a new cemetery, Old Hill Burying Ground and New Hill Burying Ground, now Highland, running out of room. And so these folks wanted to establish a new cemetery, and it was based on Mount Auburn Cemetery. It's a rural garden cemetery. So as opposed to Old Hill Burying Ground behind the Mall or St. Paul's or traditional graveyards, Oak Hill has roads and paths going through, and there were hundreds of plantings. And we still have trees from the late 1800s from those plantings. So it was a cemetery for the living, not only for those who passed, and people would go and have picnics and so forth and spend a lot of time with their loved ones in Oak Hill. So there's so many. One of my favorite is Captain Francis Todd. And my father, Todd Woodworth, who began Tiptoe Through the Tombstones with Todd back in 1988 at the urging of a friend. And Liam said, you know, Todd, you really need to do a cemetery tour. And because my father met Liam, because Liam was looking for John White Winder, the photographer. So my father, as he walked through the cemetery, was saying, Liam, oh, there's Harriet Prescott Spofford, and there's Donald McKay, and there's the Safford family who went the Klondike, and so forth. And Liam said, you got to do a cemetery tour. And my father said, nah, I don't think anybody's going to be interested. Liam said, I think so. So they advertised in the paper October 1988 and said, meet Todd at the main gates at Oak Hill, tiptoe through the tombstones with Todd. And over 40 people showed up.
Wow.
So from 88 to 2006, he gave tours for free for the community. And I took over knowing that they were important to the community, but I knew nothing about Newburyport history. This was in the fall of 2005. Wow. I said, I'll take over, I'll do them. So I had to study and research and learn how to research and just learn how to get around Oak Hill. So that was fun, and I've enjoyed it. But you got Francis Todd, one of my favorite, my father's favorite, who died in Havana in 1835 of yellow fever. And at that time, they decided to put him in, place him in a mahogany casket, and they placed the casket in a rum barrel. And the family brought him back up here. He was buried in Highland, but in the late 1800s, the family moved him to Oak Hill. And my father would say to the different superintendents over the years, you know, how about if we just dig down just a little bit, just to see if that rum barrel is still there. And it was a true story. I found the article talking about it in newspaper, in Newburyport News, talking about it, and the boys were rushed and pushed away and said, go, go, go. But they do remember seeing a cask, a very large cask. So that was one of the stories.
Deborah chatted to all of us that she took that tour.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And what's fun is many people over the years have said, oh, I've done a tour with your dad, and now I've done a tour with you. So that's kind of fun.
That's really special, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And just to think, it's only 15 years ago that you undertook learning about Newburyport history.
Right.
And now you're our go-to.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of go-to people.
Well, yeah, but for local history, yeah, totally. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there one in the chat? I see a number.
That was Deborah who
Okay.
had mentioned about the tour.
Okay.
Deborah said, I will complete that circle one day, she said.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
she'll have to take a tour with you, is what I think from that. But
I just want to say one quick comment, Ghlee, that you made that I think I really echo the sentiment is that cemeteries really can be very contemplative, peaceful places, you know, and if you're looking for a nice stroll, you know, it's also the natural terrain, you know, because people didn't flatten it or anything. They just sort of, where are we going to put this first grave? Well, how about the hill over there?
Right.
And so it's really spectacular. I think there's so many wonderful cemeteries in New England that
Yes.
are really worth stopping your car, getting out and just reading the tombstones, looking at
Right.
the artwork and trying to imagine the people.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. It's a beautiful place to wander through.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody else has any questions, Susan. So Ghlee, thank you very much for the really helpful sort of way in which we can explore Newburyport, not only on our own, but maybe in these times of isolation. You can get out a little bit, wear a mask, and put your book under your hands and go and explore.
or use your phone, right?
Use your phone, whatever you want to.
We were commenting today, this is our 6th month of virtual programming. And as we go forward, it looks like we'll be doing this every month for the next few months coming up. So thank you for joining us tonight. But Ghlee, thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. I'm getting texts through it and people saying, I love the photos. I love the horses. It was just amazing to see. And pick up the book, everybody. It's great.
Yep. Just give me a call or contact me, and I'll be at the Brown Chapel Sunday morning. And then think ahead. Great for birthday gifts or holiday gifts. You know, everybody struggles.
One of the comments was talking about maybe talk about the families and the folks you researched, but I think part of that is in your book, if that's correct. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that was why Ghlee didn't go into that much detail on that. So yeah, no, it's great. And we're looking forward to it from that end. So thank you, everybody. And have a wonderful Labor Day weekend.
All right. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Goodbye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.